welcome to this presentation of temporary I-9 guidelines during the COVID-19 pandemic. On behalf of TPC Vision, I'm Angelique O'Brien. I'm an HR advisor with TPC Vision, and I'm happy to be here to present to you today. As a legal disclaimer, this communication and any accompanying documents are intended for educational and informational purposes only, do not constitute legal information, should not be relied on as such. While we hope that you will learn a lot today, we're not attorneys, and the information should not be construed as legal advice. If you are seeking legal advice, you are encouraged to consult an attorney. The purpose of this presentation is to clarify steps that you as the employer operating remotely may take to safely and legally process new hire I-9 forms during the COVID-19 pandemic. As you may be aware, USCIS has issued temporary guidelines that allow for modification of the I-9 employment eligibility verification process during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today we'll talk about the traditional I-9 process, option 1, virtual verification, which is the new option provided to us by USCIS, option 2, using a remote agent, which is a long-standing option for employers, and what to keep in mind as you make your decision as to how to proceed. Traditional I-9 processing. Most HR professionals who handle new hire paperwork are familiar with the current standards for processing I-9. To start, employees must complete Section 1, the Employee Information and Attestation, no later than their first day of employment. In the employee's presence, the employer must then physically inspect the I-9 document. Employers must complete Section 2, the employer or authorized representative review and verification. And it's important to note that the employer portion of the inspection, as well as the paperwork, must be completed within 3 days of hire and must be completed by the same individual. If your workplace or a given role is not structured for remote work, you should continue to follow the traditional I-9 process. This brings us to option 1, virtual verification. This is the new option provided to us by USCIS. As of March 20th, when the order came out, employers are not required to physically review the employee's I-9 documents in their physical presence in situations where the employer or that specific role are operating remotely. Employers must still obtain, inspect, and retain documents in copy form, and they must still follow the 3-day timeline that was previously in place. Because of the unique situation, employers should enter COVID-19 as the reason for physical inspection delay in Section 2 in the additional information field, which we'll take a look at in a minute. When using the virtual verification arrangement, once normal business is resumed, you do need to go forward with the physical inspection of documents. So in this situation, employees who were onboarded using virtual verification must report to their employer within 3 business days after normal business is resumed in order to conduct the in-person verification of identity and employment eligibility documentation. Once those documents have been physically inspected, the employer should add documents physically examined on with the date of inspection to Section 2 additional information field. And here's that I-9 form and section that we talked about. So on the left, you'll see page 2, which is also section 2 of the I-9 document. And right there in the middle of the page is the additional information box. This is a section we don't often use, but it is there for use in times such as these. When completing a paper I-9, again, you would want to note COVID-19 as the reason the documents were digitally rather than physically examined, along with the date. And that should be done within 3 days of hire. And then additionally, at the end of your work from home period, when you resume normal business, you would want to physically examine those documents within 3 days of returning to normal business and make the documents physically examined note again with the date. Now, if you use iSolved for your I-9s, you can complete that in the system digitally as you normally would, and then you can actually print the I-9 from the employee documents section, make your additional information notes for your record-keeping purposes, and then scan and save that back into the iSolved system, just as you would any other employee. This brings us to option 2, using a remote agent. This is an option that USCIS has provided for us for quite some time. This is an existing I-9 provision in which the employer may designate authorized representative to meet with the new hire, examine their documents, and complete Section 2 on behalf of the organization. The latest I-9 form notes that an authorized representative can be any person you designate. The employer may permit the new hire's friend or family member, or may designate another employee of the organization to complete the document review process and sign Section 2. It's important to note that the employer is ultimately liable for any violations in connection with the form being improperly completed. So after completion, you do want to review and make sure that the form is completed properly and that the copies of the documents that you have on hand are clear and legible. This is a great option if the new hire is unable to visit a third party due to shelter-in-place requirements or other social distancing recommendations, or if your HR person is working remotely and you need someone else in the physical location to complete the process. If you do decide to use a remote agent, here are some helpful tips. Be sure to provide clear direction to the new hire on who you could permit to act as an agent. Could it be a friend? Could it be a family member, etc.? Avoid using minors, as they may not fully understand the legal implications of incomplete or inaccurate I-9 processing. Be sure to clearly communicate all of your instructions and deadlines both to the new hire and to the agent. Address frequently asked questions such as how to complete the form, the employee's start date, the business name and address, the title, and you might consider providing a sample I-9. Be sure to provide your HR or hiring manager contact info and consider using video conferencing and observe the verification. Be sure to instruct the remote agent to copy and scan the documents that the employee presents to ensure compliance. Of note, if you're an E-Verify employer, you must have copies of the U.S. passport, passport card, green card, or EAD for photo matching process. A few things to keep in mind as you make your decision as to how to proceed with processing I-9s during the COVID-19 pandemic. Remember, these I-9 provisions are not unrestricted. The virtual verification provision is temporary and applies only to employers and workplaces that are operating remote. If there are employees physically present at a work location, no exceptions are being implemented at this time for in-person verification of I-9 documents. Employers may designate an authorized representative to act on their behalf to complete Section 2. An authorized representative can be any person the employer designates. And remember, in the end, the employer is liable for any violations in connection with the form or the verification process, including any violations of the employer sanctions or laws committed by the person designated to act on the employer's behalf. Thank you for your time today. We hope this presentation was helpful. If you have any questions, please contact TPC Vision.